You're listening to the podcast Coffee with Mike and Julie, Libertarians Talk Psychology. This is current commentary from an MBA businessman and a PhD psychologist.
Look what they done to my song, Ma.
Today I want to talk about information and how important it is for libertarians to have accurate information and how hard it is with human beings to get accurate information.
Was it always difficult, or is that just something we're aware of now?
Well, it is. That's a question, isn't it? From our perspective, but we have a biased perspective because we were in the stage of life where we were courting, and then we were having children and raising children, and I don't know that I paid enough attention to be a good witness to what.
Yeah, we were in the rat race, but I know we couldn't get good information about the wars. That's well documented.
Maybe that's it. The fact is there's plenty of secrecy and cheating that always goes on with humans. That's one of the naivety things that I want to punctuate, is that if you don't think there's a shadow and everybody walking around, you're thinking about being in Disneyland. Everybody has a shadow, and it's going to come out in different ways. And maybe from our perspective, it's just breaking down so much, we're just aghast. But maybe it was always that problem.
Okay, and go ahead and define shadow.
The unconscious dark side.
Okay.
The negative side of the force.
Okay.
The dominion.
Go straight to Star Wars lingo so that we can understand this.
What did Yoda say to Luke? It's like, beware the dark side. Beware. Did he say the dark side?
Yeah.
He used that term, but he said anger, aggression, whatever. It will forever dominate your destiny.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
Only Lucas can come up with that kind of great stuff.
Come up with that kind of dialogue with all your fancy philosophers, psychologists. They don't say stuff that good.
Well, there are very few Trekkies in my community. I mean, that's
their loss.
That should have told me something. Okay, so I want to set the stage on this by saying that in 2015, a bombshell in psychology came out from the Open Science Collaboration group, and they studied replication of findings. So the point here is, let me back up and say, this thing about follow science is really pretty silly statement, because science is a set of very loosely proven and agreed upon facts. I mean, science is, this Open Science Collaboration, the claim that we already know this belies the uncertainty of scientific evidence. But in 2015, they came out and studied psychology and tried to replicate. I think they picked 100, they said, we conducted replications of 100 experimental and correlational studies published in 3 psychology journals. Okay, they found a miserable replication rate.
Okay, so replication, they tried to repeat the research.
Yes.
And tried to see if they would get the same results as the original research had come up with.
Yes. Okay, so replication effects, that would be the size of the effect, the size of the variable that they're studying. The replication effects were half the magnitude of the original effects, representing a substantial decline. 97% of the original studies had statistically significant results, while only 36% of the replications had statistically.
And that's what you're talking about, too, when you're talking about the impact that the original research said, look at this
amazing finding.
Significant finding.
You have people in psychology that take one study and they'll change what they're doing based on one study.
Yeah.
I mean, they follow the science, quote unquote, when in fact, so this shocked everybody. Everybody said, oh my God, this is horrible.
And
let's see what
but it was pretty well accepted that it was a pretty good study of a broad range of research. They weren't just picking one type of research.
They weren't picking and choosing. In fact, it's changed the field a lot. I mean, everybody's jaw dropped. It's funny that everybody's jaw dropped, and let me tell you why and about that. But anyway, let me see what else I want to say about that. They had potentially problematic practices included selective reporting, selective analysis, insufficient specification of the conditions necessary or sufficient to obtain the results. They listed all the reasons they thought this was a problem. And it's a problem that's being addressed. However, and this I'm going to finish the introduction here and then tell you what I want to say about this study I dug up. This shouldn't have been any kind of surprise to people because a famous study titled Why Most Published Research Findings Are False by John P. A. Loanidis, Loannidis, famous study, 2005, 10 years before the 2015. And he actually proves, I should read this even though it's going to be a little long for you, so bear with me.
Okay.
Because he kind of proves logically and statistically that most published research is false. And he says, because, let's see, in this framework, a research finding is less likely to be true when the studies conducted in a field are smaller, when the effect sizes are smaller, when there is a greater number and lesser pre-selection of tested relationships, when there is greater flexibility in designs, definitions, outcomes, and analytical modes, when there is greater financial and other interest and prejudice, and when more teams are involved in a scientific field in chase of statistical significance.
So the one that I heard was the financial one.
Financial, but, people are chasing statistical significance. Now, we're not going to get into this, but this idea about people do not understand that statistical significance is only the estimate of whether this effect could have come about by chance. It's not an estimate of the effect coming about by other motivated behaviors. It's just chance. So it's really pretty flawed. But this goes into Bayesian calculus and things that I don't understand well, but kind of very intuitively understand. But here's what this guy, Loannidis.
Yeah.
How would you pronounce that?
I have no idea.
The first part of it is loan,
Dr.
and the
L.
last part is nidis.
Dr. L.
Loannidis. But anyway, he says, simulations, and he did all his work through simulations show that for most study designs and settings, it is more likely a research claim to be false than true. Moreover, for many current scientific fields, claimed research findings may often be simply accurate measures of prevailing bias.
Wow.
So this is available. His research is on Med+. Let's see. Well, open access, freely available. I don't even know the journal, but everybody cites it. Okay, so when someone says follow the science, that's a stupid thing to say, especially when it's new science like COVID.
And the thing that occurs to me, especially when we're talking about stuff that's hard to measure to begin with.
Hard to measure. You're right to say that science is not a destination. It's a journey. It's a zigzag path. I mean, almost everything that's been found has been disproven or changed or something. I mean, it's a moving target. Someone who says follow the science is like not a scientist, not a real scientist.
What's the phrase they use for the majority of the opinion of scientists? They have a certain phrase for that.
Consensus?
Well, yeah, the consensus of the scientific community is that we have this, so we don't even need to talk about it anymore. Don't even bring it up.
And then one of the authors said that it's like, we know this. No, you don't know this. And people use, even Jordan Peterson will use that settled science. well, it's really not settled science. There is
Almost nothing.
almost nothing. No, well, I should say that. I mean, I'm a scientist in a social science, which is soft, which is almost, I don't consider anything settled. But now you get more settled science in biology, and you get a more settled science in physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We engineers are familiar with science.
I mean,
and
gravity
feel
pretty much
good about it.
stays, the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's a fair conclusion. If you want to follow the science, make sure you're following physics. But look at how they're turned on their head by quantum information theory.
Yeah.
I mean, even physics is like, what?
Yeah, physics only applies for a certain range of the world. If you get outside of that range, our normal understanding of physics.
Well, that's what quantum mechanics showed us, is that
the stuff that Isaac Newton came up with
only works on the Earth.
Well, it's kind of amazing.
We can't be sure it works on another planet.
I taught statics 30, 40 years ago.
Now, what you have to tell people what statics means.
Statics is physics of stuff that doesn't move. But that's what statics is. But the point is, Isaac Newton came up with statics, and it's been taught almost exactly the same way ever since his day. I came across old textbooks on statics. I mean, there's just nothing new about it. We engineers,
there's nothing new about gravity.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, we engineers, we just improve on the presentation.
Yeah.
The new textbooks just come up with better example problems and all that sort of thing. But it's exactly the same stuff. How comforting for us engineers to have those areas of science for us really don't change. But you get into the quantum level stuff, quantum or the space age stuff.
Well, quantum mechanics is where it just all at the subatomic level, or whatever you might call subatomic level, it all falls apart.
Yeah, the microscopic or whatever. The Isaac Newton stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, and so even the point you're making is even physics, it must change to incorporate the new information somehow. But right now there are two physics. There's one at the the quantum level, and there's one at the local world level.
Yeah.
And somehow, not to go down this rabbit hole, but they can't seem to integrate them. I mean, they've had 100 years or more to integrate them, and they can't seem to integrate them. I think they can.
Well, they still have a lot to learn about the quantum level stuff. I think they'll be able to kind of integrate the two if they ever get enough information about.
Well, yeah, sooner or later. Who knows how long, if we exist at a level where we can understand it. This is not on my topic.
I know. but you're talking to an engineer. I have to say it. And I'm just saying, as it's gratifying as an engineer to hear the difficulty that the other sciences have, because it's solid as a rock for us engineers.
Well, and that's the hard sciences, and so when they say follow the science, well, I want to include in the social sciences medical science.
Yeah.
Now, there's biology and there's chemistry, but there's also so-called medical science, and so it's subjective too. So it's ridiculously flawed. But the point I'm trying to make for libertarians, and I want to make this last point with this article, is that in order to be free, you must have access to information. Sooner or later, the information, it's a libertarian's responsibility to be skeptical, but also to be curious and to investigate and educate ourselves as to accurate information. So information is key to freedom.
So you're saying that we don't need some central authority to tell us what the truth is when it comes to science?
Well, I certainly don't need a politician say follow the science, which is motivated reasoning on the politician's part. So we're going to get into this in a second.
Okay.
So I want to point out that Matthew Hornsey of Queensland Business School in 2020, he publishes in one of my journals that I, give some credit to, which I'm beginning to be a skeptic about everybody and everything. I'm beginning really to be cynical. He authors Why Facts Are Not Enough, Understanding and Managing the Motivated Rejection of Science. So this is in this essay or whatever you want to call it. He talks about the attitudes of creationists, anti-vaccination advocates, and climate skeptics. Okay. He lists these reasons why the public is skeptic.
Okay, so let me frame this a little better. This guy, we're both kind of smiling as you talk about this because this guy is the opposite of what you're talking about. So this is his justification for his stance.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we can critique him in a minute, but he's critiquing the skeptics.
He's critiquing us.
Yeah, happens to be. I mean, I'm not let's get into that in a minute. I want to give you these things. So he says, I summarize research on 6 psychological roots from which science skeptical attitudes grow. Well, okay, here they are. Ideologies, vested interest, conspiracy worldviews, fears and phobias, personal identity expression, and social identity needs.
Okay.
What's missing in this picture? The fact that science is garbage. Science skeptical attitudes are really...
That's a good point. Because I agree with all these reasons there, but you're correct to point out the biggest reason
is science is mostly garbage.
That's right.
It's garbage. The biggest reason. It's garbage until it's not garbage.
That's the biggest reason to question
it's like
a scientific finding it's garbage.
It's paradoxical. Most research is false. Most scientific research is false. And the idea that it's settled and that you can count on it.
And you're just disagreeing with it because of your religious attitudes.
Yeah. See, this is the cognitive elite that Stanovich talks about. I actually did not read the whole article, so he may say something. Let's see if he referenced Leonidas.
Dr. L.
I doubt it. Nope. Leonidas is not there. And let's see if he referenced open collaboration. No, so the public is skeptical. So here he's putting down people who are skeptical.
Yeah.
Now, I said that I think my critique of the comic Bill Maher is like mocking people who are skeptical or unbelieving. There should be a rule against that, is that you don't mock someone's beliefs because that's their skepticism. And skepticism and curious and investigatory skepticism is an important characteristic for not joining the herd mentality.
Well, I would put it a different way. I would say he's free to be, he and all the comedians, they're free to be skeptical or dismissive. And we are free to ridicule them. I mean, both sides
that's the
free to ridicule each other.
You're right. I think it's like the creationist, the atheist and creationist. Here's how I feel about them. Have they read quantum information theory? Anyone that says the creationists don't know what they're talking about is not keeping an open mind to quantum theory, because quantum theory will blow your damn mind. I mean, it takes the legs out from under anything. It proves we don't know shit. We don't know anything. We don't know what isn't true. We don't know what is true.
Okay. All right. This story, I have a funny story, and you may want to exclude it. But every now and then, we'll have a couple of holy rollers that come up to the front door and want to talk to us about Jesus or whoever it is, Jesus or whatever. But I never want to listen to a word of all that. But you are this is one of those areas where you are a hell of a lot nicer than I am. when it comes to.
It's not just nice. I feel like they might know something I need to know.
Well, you know, whenever
my father used to say, you know, be careful who shows up to your door. They might be angels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I attribute more magic to the world than you attribute.
But this one time that I remember was that I entered the door. As soon as I knew who they were, I said, "Hold on, let me go get my wife. She'll talk to you."
She'll talk to you. Let me go get
So
Mikey. Mikey will leave.
you were up there, and y'all were being nice and relating, and they were all glassy-eyed because they had a good listener, and you were having fun with them and all that sort of thing. But somehow evolution came up, and you were open to the concept of evolution, and they were completely closed down on the subject of evolution. And somewhere along the way, they started getting testy with you. And of course, that's the wrong way to interact with you, to get testy with you. You were getting testy with them. And when I came back in the room, you were standing in the door. They were walking away, and you were talking to the back of them because of something they had just said.
You actually remember this?
Yeah.
Because I think this story is a mixture of several different events.
Well, my memory could exaggerate it.
I think you have created a false
memory. No, it isn't false.
It's not false, but it's two or three different
It could be
events.
A little exaggerated, but that's the way I remember.
Well, I do know that when I show an open mind to their belief system, and then they show a closed mind to my belief system, it's like we're not going any further.
Well,
that's as far as the relationship
That's all I'm trying to describe. But it was funny. It was funny to watch.
But it was. Those were the two ladies that came here, and they wanted me to read the Bible. And I did try to read the Bible, and I couldn't get through it. I was like, "Good, this is horrible reading."
But they had in mind let's the three of us sit down and read the Bible together. That was,
me and them.
Yeah.
I think they were recruiting me to come to become a member of that.
Okay.
Here's what I feel that you don't feel. Their worldview wants them to save my soul.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Okay.
I appreciate anybody that wants to save my soul.
And I understand. I'm just not going to put much of my energy into it.
You're not that type. Not that type.
I remember as a kid, one of these men came through Clinton, Louisiana. We had a country store, and this guy gets Mama on her knees. You know, she's turning away customers so that she will pray with him. And
Did that freak you out as a child?
The two of them are on their knees in the country store. You know, with us kids running around and running through, and the two of them.
I had a grandmother that put us on our knees to pray.
Oh, gee.
So it didn't freak me out. Probably freaked you out.
Yeah.
But okay, so
Sorry.
the point is not what you just spent 2-3 minutes talking about.
It's been an overly long time.
The point is that the academic scientists, the soft sciences, as we've established, are very suspicious right now because the academia is now an embedded group with government agencies. And by the way, that's because they make their money through government agencies.
That's right.
They get government grants. Government grants is pretty much the way the government funds them. So the woke bluebirds fund the science.
And academia is part of government. They are government employees. They are, it is a rare.
Well, that's a very good point.
It's a rare academic who is on the private side of the world. They are completely dependent on government, and people who are government employees tend to believe government is a good thing.
Yes, you're pointing out the conflict of interest in science. And so science, especially psychology and all other social sciences, it's funded by government. It's looking to it's in bed with government. It's in bed with the people that are protecting the government entity. I think all these things as like circles and their organizations and their embedded groups. So they overlap. And to the extent they overlap, the culture of one group affects the culture and thinking of the other group, and that as you say, there are very few independent thinkers. So as libertarians, we need to be very aware of this. Of course, we are aware of it, but the fact is what we're trying to do is get everyone to think for themselves, because we want the decisions to be made at the lowest level of the society. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is an individual goal, not government goal. The government protects the individual, and that's what they need accurate information for.